community informed about the problems that are going to face it so that we then can go off and battle and fight for what is best for our community. Uh, Before I get to introducing our speakers here, I would like to say that the offer to be a part of this panel was extended to the Mount National Association and the Forest Service, but both of them declined to Eric Navikas is a citizen activist and former city councilor. He is very familiar with the city water system's history of problems with the watershed management. Would you like to start?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. So yeah, I'm Eric Navikas. I've been working on protecting this area from development for the last 13 years. When it first came out some 13 years ago, it was sold to the public through the press as being this very well-designed, environmentally sensitive proposal. The most environmentally sensitive ski development ever designed was the way it was portrayed. And so we decided to explore for ourselves early on and take a look at it. And what we found was that it was very poorly designed, actually, and in one of the more critical drainages within our municipal watershed, where some of the healthiest springs that feed our drinking water supply originated. So we began to organize some 10 years ago, or 13 years ago now, and built a movement over that time, and it's been really empowering to see the growth of the movement, especially in recent years as this becomes more critical. But let me go over the history a little bit. When the EIS first came out, they released an EIS, I believe it was in 2000 was the first EIS. And that was so limited in its scope. The EPA stepped in, and we actually made phone calls to the EPA. And if you are working on environmental causes like this, one of the most effective things you can do is to call interagencies, because they do have to review these environmental impact statements. So we were calling the EPA quite a bit, and they made very harsh comments over the first EIS, because one of the requirements of an environmental impact statement is that it has a broad range of alternatives. And this only offered basically one alternative and the no action alternative. And it's the same alternative that we're looking at with their final decision today, with some minor variations, but basically the exact same alternative. So the EPA said that, no, this study is inadequate. You need to do the requirement of a broad range of alternatives. So they came back and put out another environmental impact statement that did have a broad range of alternatives, but was limited in other ways and used a lot of questionable and very biased science. And so we sued over that. Myself and the Sierra Club, we won that lawsuit over the 2004 document that was released at that point. And so now what they've done is they've come back and they've done a supplemental environmental impact statement. And the claims that we won over were first over the Pacific Fissure. They hadn't done adequate surveys of Pacific Fissure, and interestingly enough, it was actually an SOU student who went up there at that time and got video recordings of a Pacific Fissure within the area, which is a small weasel creature. And they didn't go back and do further studies. So that was one of the claims that we won over. And then the other claim was over the landslide hazard zonation mapping that they did. And early in the process, there was, we brought forward maps and showed them where they were cutting through areas that had been mapped previously as high hazard for landsliding. And within a week, the Forest Service came back after that and changed their mapping. Instead, we were expecting to see them change the locations of the runs, but instead they said that they did a computer analysis and that these slopes that had been mapped previously as high hazard were no longer high hazard. And basically what that resulted in was a discrepancy between the riparian mapping and the landslide hazard zonation mapping, and we were able to win in court over that. So their attempts to manipulate the mapping actually backfired on them in this case, which was fortunate for us up to now. But they have come back with supplemental environmental impact statement that addressed those two issues that we won in court over, and now they've released a new decision. It's gone through an administrative appeal process. They've sided with moving forward with the expansion, and now it is once again ripe for litigation, and we will be filing a lawsuit in the immediate future. But just quickly, let me, just quickly, I want to go over this map that I brought. And yeah, this is pretty low tech, but this is the Ashen Creek watershed. So the boundary is in this dotted line. I hope everyone can see it. It might be a little bit difficult.
We could put it up here.
Yeah, maybe we can raise it up.
Turn the lights down.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you lean it forward a little bit, it'll reduce the gloss a lot. Can we pull this down so it locks it? Great. Yeah,
You
that's.
can turn down the lights too.
Yeah, if you can just hold it, maybe that'd be the best. Yeah. Can you not see it at all? Let me just. Basically, beginning in 1955.
What about there? Is that better?
Looks like it's about to fall forward.
Well, I don't think that's
Yeah, maybe it's not.
Eric, tell us what you see on that.
Yeah. Beginning in 1955, before that, the watershed had been preserved, dating back to 1893 when the city petitioned Congress to protect the entire watershed. And then in 1955, the district ranger came to the city of Ashland and said, we have these extreme fuel loads in your watershed. And it sounds basically identical to the story that we hear today, that fire suppression has created incredible fuel loads. We have all these mistletoe branches. If we don't move into our watershed immediately and do fuels reduction work, we're going to see catastrophic fire. And what they proceeded to do was to put in upwards of 50 miles of roads into the watershed and to begin doing clear cutting to pay for that road building. So the boundary of the watershed is here, if that is visible to you. The city of Ashland is up here. The city's drinking water, Rita Reservoir, is right there. So much of these lower areas have now been clear cut in these patches. And then a great deal up here too. And then in the early 60s, they put in the ski development. And almost immediately after the ski development was put in, within a couple of years, the 64 flood hit. And it, as a result of all the commercial logging, road building, and recreational development, it was catastrophic to the municipal water, to the reservoir, and dumped about a third of the reservoir full of sediment, which then had to be removed by various means. At that point, they were doing, using a large ocean dredger that was very expensive to use, and they had to haul the dirt out. And they were also using sluicing to remove sediment from the reservoir, which is opening the floodgates at the bottom of the dam to allow all the sediment to flush out. But it's very difficult to implement, and it's very detrimental to the stream channel below. It basically sandblasts the entire stream channel and kills every bit of organic life all the way down to Bear Creek. So it's really difficult to clean out the reservoir. It's a very expensive problem for the city. Then the 74 flood hit, and once again, a similar situation where about a third of the reservoir was filled with sediment and very costly for the city of Ashland and the environment. And then a lot of the understanding of the critical issues were lost through institutional shifts in the government. And in the early 80s, they began doing more fire reduction work, and they put in this large complex of fuel breaks in the early 80s and 90s that are these stripes up here. And there's 9.5 miles of these fuel breaks, and basically what they are swaths that are about as wide as the room here from back to front, maybe even a little wider, that have occasional trees. And from what I've seen, those areas have become serious problems from a fire standpoint over the years. And they've become brush fields. You see lots of tree mortality along the periphery of those areas. And they're also dry, hot areas that are prone to fire ignition. So one of the things that we need to be very aware of, too, is that the Forest Service is moving forward, in addition to the ski development proposal, with a very large fire reduction plan. And they're proposing to add 21 more miles of these fuel breaks in the lower parts of the watershed, and even up into areas into the McDonald Peak roadless area in the upper parts of the watershed. They'll cut a fuel break up to, or they're intending to, up to Horn Gap, which is just below Wagner Butte. So not only is our watershed now threatened from recreational development, but there's also a very large logging project proposed under the guise of fire reduction. And that includes utilizing over 30 helicopter pads in order to remove the timber. And granted, there are a lot of non-commercial elements of that project where they're doing prescribed fire and thinning from below, small diameter hand pile and burn projects. But a large portion of that project is in creating a large infrastructure of fuel breaks, 21 miles of these that compartmentalize the entire watershed. AFR project, yeah. Okay, so that's.
Good luck.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Eva.
Can I just ask, since they plan these fuel breaks, can you tell us what they're supposed to do, mitigate wildfires, or, and why doesn't it do it?
Right, that's the purpose and need of the project is to prevent large-scale catastrophic fire. There's various means of doing that. The Parks Department has means where they allow prescribed wildfire. And the city of Portland's watershed is completely protected from any type of commercial logging, and they're able to deal with their fire management without using a commercial element to helicopter log trees out. So there's a lot of different means of dealing with those problems of fuel buildup. And it's even questionable, well, the science on it is very complicated as well, and whether you have the potential for infinite fuel buildup that is portrayed by the Forest Service and other specialists is very questionable. And there's numerous limiting factors that prevent infinite fuel buildup within the system, mainly canopy closure and stabilization of growth. And actually, when you begin to thin out trees and take out those big overstory canopy trees, you create vegetative responses where you get lots of small diameter trees coming in, and the forest becomes more prone to fire.